You know that feeling when a piece of music just hits you and you wonder, how does that happen? How can some wood and some metal and just plain old air team up to create something that gives you goosebumps? Well, let's get into it, because today we are pulling back the curtain on the hidden physics behind every single note you've ever heard.
So, take a look at this. On one side, you've got these sweet, natural sounds, a kitten, some birds. On the other, you've got the total chaos of city traffic. I mean, they couldn't feel more different, right? But believe it or not, from a physics point of view, they are made of the exact same stuff. So what on earth is the secret connection between a kitten's meow and a car engine's roar?
The answer, and it's almost shockingly simple, is vibration. That's it. That is the one single universal secret behind every sound in the cosmos. Doesn't matter if it's a tiny bee's wings, your own voice, or a giant jet engine, if you can hear it, I promise you, something is vibrating. That shaking creates these waves of energy that zip through the air all the way to your ears.
Okay, so if all sound is just stuff wiggling back and forth, how do we get the incredible variety of sounds we hear in music? You know, how do we get a whole symphony instead of just a big jumbled mess of noise? Well, to figure that out, we've got to learn the language of vibration itself. And that brings us to the most important word of the day: frequency.
Frequency is just a fancy word for how fast something is vibrating. We measure it in a unit called hertz, or Hz for short. So 1 hertz, that's just one little wiggle back and forth every second. If a guitar string vibrates 440 times in 1 second, we say its frequency is 440 hertz. And it's that number that our brain is about to turn into a specific musical note.
And this is where our brain does this amazing little magic trick. We don't actually hear 440 hertz. Our brain just takes that speed of vibration and translates it into what we call pitch. It's a super simple relationship. A slow vibration, that's a low frequency, gives us a low, deep pitch, like a bass drum. And a really fast vibration, a high frequency, gives us a high pitch, like a flute. This is the one rule to rule them all. Music is just the art of controlling frequency. All right, let's see this whole idea in action. First up, we're going to look at one of the oldest types of instruments on the planet. The ones that make sound by vibrating a stretched out surface. You know what I'm talking about, the drum.
So, how in the world do you get different sounds out of something that's basically just a flat circle? It might look simple, but drummers are total masters of physics, even if they don't realize it. So how do they control the frequency of this vibrating surface?
Let's do a little thought experiment right now. First, picture tapping on a really loose drum head, like what you see in step 1. You're going to get a low, floppy thud sound, right? Now what happens if you really crank up the tension, like in step 2, and then hit it again? Bam! You get a much sharper, higher, snappier sound.
And boom, that gives us our first big takeaway. For any instrument with a membrane, making it tighter forces it to vibrate faster. Our brain hears that higher frequency as a higher pitch. It's really that simple. For a drum, tension is everything. It's the dial you turn to find the note.
Okay, but get this. You don't even need a solid object to make vibrations. You can actually make music by vibrating something we can't even see, a column of air. And that, my friends, is the secret behind every wind instrument ever made. Let's take a simple flute. When a musician blows across the top, they get that whole column of air inside the tube to start vibrating. But the melody, the actual magic, well, that comes from all those little holes along the side. So what's the deal with the holes? How do they change the sound? So imagine you're playing this flute with all the holes covered up, just like in step 1. That means the air has to vibrate along the entire length of the flute. That's a long column of air, which gives you a low note. But watch what happens as the player starts lifting their fingers. Every time they open a hole, they're basically creating an escape route for the air, making that vibrating column shorter and shorter. And here is our second big rule. A shorter column of air vibrates way faster than a long one. That faster vibration, that higher frequency, gives you a higher pitch. So every time a flutist is moving their fingers, they're not just covering holes, they are literally resizing their instrument in real time to create a new note. Pretty cool, huh? All right, now for our grand finale. And this category is probably the most complex. String instruments like guitars and violins are so fascinating because they don't just use one trick to control vibration. Oh no. They're playing the physics game on expert mode, using 3 different methods all at once. So, to make a string vibrate faster and get that higher pitch, a musician has 3 different levers they can pull. As you can see right here, they can mess with the string's length, they can change its tension, and they can even change how thick it is. Let's break down how each one of those works.
First up, length. This one's easy.
When a guitar player presses a finger down on a fret, what they're really doing is shortening the part of the string that's actually free to vibrate. And just like that short column of air in the flute, a shorter string just naturally vibrates faster. And a faster vibration means a higher pitch. Simple as that.
Next up, tension. And this should sound pretty familiar. Remember our drum? Same exact deal here. Tightening a string makes it vibrate faster. So when you see a musician turning those little tuning pegs on a guitar or a violin, they are literally increasing the tension, which cranks up the frequency and raises the pitch.
And finally, we have thickness. Just look at any guitar and you'll see this in action immediately. The big, fat, heavy strings, those are for the low notes, because all that mass makes them kind of lazy. They vibrate slowly. But the skinny, light strings, they have way less resistance, so they can vibrate super fast, giving us those high, soaring notes.
So we've looked at membranes, we've looked at columns of air, and we've looked at strings. They all seem so different. But now let's bring it all home and reveal the one, single, unifying rule that conducts this entire orchestra of physics.
So, what have we really learned here? I mean, whether it's a drummer tightening a drum, a flutist changing the length of an air column, or a guitarist pressing down on a string, it's all about the same thing. At the end of the day, every musical instrument is just an elegant, brilliantly designed machine for doing one job: controlling the frequency of vibrations with incredible precision.
So you could really say that music is just organized physics. It's us, as humans, finding a creative, beautiful way to take mastery over a fundamental law of the universe, the law of vibration, and turn it into pure art. So the next time you're listening to your favorite song, or even just the quiet hum of your room, just stop and remember what's happening. Every single sound is a